The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, thinking they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
What's this I see outside our windows here on Jennifer Street in beautiful Friendship Heights? Why, it's beautiful sunshine. How about that? Boy, yesterday, awful. Now, where I live in Montgomery County, in Germantown, we didn't get a lot of wind. We got rain. Understand it was bad in some parts. I'm long past the days of worrying about kids getting out of school early, but Montgomery County followed Prince George's County, Anne Arundel, all these others that shut down early. And, I don't know why they weren't able to anticipate this. We're into January. We haven't used snow days yet, as far as I know. So maybe yesterday would have been a good day to just call off school altogether, but again, not my concern. I'm in the grandfather stage of life now, and that's concerns of other people. We're going to talk a lot about what's going on in the search for a team president, a head of football operations, according to reports, and there hasn't been any pushback from the organization. So they want it out there that they are pursuing the top candidates to become head of football operations for this team. And report was that last night at his beautiful estate in Miami, Josh Harris lives in reportedly a $32 million Miami Beach mansion, that he had Adam Peters over for dinner. Adam Peters is the assistant general manager of the San Francisco 49ers. 49ers obviously know what the hell they're doing. They have the top seed in the NFC, and they have been a consistent winner in the last, 5 or 6 years, and now they're perhaps headed to the Super Bowl with Mr. Irrelevant, Brock Purdy. They've swung and missed on a few things, but when they've made mistakes, they've made up for them. And here's a guy who seems to know what he's doing. There's some other names that are being kicked around, and they're, from what they've leaked, they're talking to everybody. Everybody who could conceivably be a candidate for that job, and also requesting interviews just to get in line on this, kind of like at the deli. You get your number. Because a lot of these coaches are tied up in playoff games and you can't talk to them until they're out. But the name Ben Johnson seems to be at the top of the list. Everybody's interested in him, offensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions. And, they've taken a quarterback who was discarded. When they made the Matt Stafford trade, the idea was that the Lions were going to take on a quarterback who was going to be discarded. I mean, that was part of the deal, and now they are going head to head, which is delicious in the NFL, and they're going to have a playoff game this weekend. But that's the name that's out there. But one thing that Harris made clear the other day at his news conference is that he is going to hire a head of football operations first, and then they will decide on who becomes the head coach. But it looks like, I would not be surprised if they have somebody in place within a week. And they're moving fast, and good for them, because, there's a lot of competition. Another shoe dropped yesterday as Mike Vrabel was fired as coach of the Tennessee Titans. So that's another opening there. They're going to be pursuing people. Maybe Vrabel goes into the mix as a coach that you might be interested in. I think they would be. He did a good job. I don't understand really why he got fired in Tennessee, but he did. So he's out there. He comes off the Belichick tree, played for him, coached under him with New England. Also has some college experience. I believe he was a defensive coordinator at Ohio State where he played. So, a lot of names thrown around, and we've been through this drill so many times that we've kind of become used to it, and it's just yet another January around here where the search is on to rebuild. The great difference is ding dong, the witch is dead, that you don't have Dan Snyder anymore. And we used to say about Snyder, it's funny, we used to say, well, whatever you want to say about Dan, he knows how to sell. He's a great salesman. He gets his man. Well, in most cases, he was giving them false promises, like, I'm going to leave you alone, let you do your thing. And also, he was giving them more money than anybody else. Money is still a factor, although money has just gone nuts now. Eric Spoelstra, great coach, no question, in the NBA, 16th year, Miami Heat. He's reportedly signing an extension, 8 years, $120 million. Used to be, you'd get an NBA coach $4 or $5 million a year, and maybe you still do at the lower levels, but $120 million over 8 years? Wow, they're not going to let him get away. Why would he want to leave Miami? Great place to live. He's had great success there, and it's so funny when LeBron James went there as part of the decision when he went to play with Chris Bosh and Dwayne Wade, the big three. And a lot of the discussion was, well, this little pisher here, Eric Spoelstra, LeBron's not going to want to play for him. He's going to demand that Pat Riley come out of the front office and coach the Heat again. It didn't happen. They won a couple of championships with Coach Spo, and Coach Spo has taken the Heat back to the finals a couple of times without the big three. So he's a very good coach, but it just shows you what kind of money is available in these positions. So money now becomes irrelevant for these guys, I think. I mean, yeah, you always want to be paid the highest, but at some point it reaches a level of, okay, where can I succeed? And certainly there's enough money that would make it, if it's a matter of a few $1 million, I'm going to take that discount to go someplace where I have a chance to win. And we're going to see what this ownership is all about and how they handle things and how they become respected over a period of years. But so far, I'm hearing all the right things coming out of Josh Harris. So get back to this and some thoughts. Mike Florio, just to stir the pot, has some, I'm not so sure yet about Josh Harris' thoughts. We'll get to those coming up. But I've said this, and I've said this since he was introduced at the end of the last college basketball season. So I imagine Ed Cooley was hired sometime in April. And I've been listening to news conferences from coaches for almost 50 years, and it's changed in that in the old days you didn't get the news conference audio or video of it. Now you can look it up on YouTube. You hear extended news conferences. You hear them live. Back in the day, it was mostly writers going to these news conferences and writing down some quotes. And Lefty Driesell, famous for some quotes, although, in his case and in Dick Motta's case with the Washington Bullets, their quotes were really attributed to other people, yet they become their trademark quotes. Like Lefty Driesell supposedly saying, we're going to make Maryland the UCLA of the East. That was something he heard from Jay McMillan, Tom McMillan's brother, who said that to him. He said, hey, Lefty, you have the chance to make Maryland the UCLA of the East. So Lefty was quoting Jay McMillan when those words came out of his mouth. And, of course, with Dick Motta on his way to leading the Bullets to the NBA championship in 1978, supposedly said, the opera ain't over till the fat lady sings. Well, that was when they were in San Antonio, and they were up on the Spurs. I think it was 2-1. People were looking at the series thinking, okay, you guys are in great shape. You ought to be able to close that out. And as Motta said, as that guy on TV said last night, the opera ain't over till the fat lady sings. He was quoting Dan Cook, who was a longtime sportscaster on a Channel 5 in San Antonio. And he was a folksy kind of guy, he'd grown up in the South and in Texas. And, was a guy who liked to hang out late and drink. He owned a bar. He's one of those guys, kind of a Runyon-esque character from the Southwest. And he said that. And that was Motta quoting him. So anyway, a roundabout way of getting to guys who are really quotable, guys who do great news conferences. Haven't been many here. Joe Gibbs was very bland. He was sort of cheerleaderish. He was talking, we need our fans out there. Before him, George Allen kept the media at arm's length. He was very suspicious of the media, wouldn't say anything. John Thompson was really good, but he was bullying as a coach. He looked at the media as somewhat of an adversary, something that could be a distraction for his players. So he stuck his big body out there and said, "I got you, boys," meaning his players. I'm going to take care of the media here, and so that was kind of the bombastic way that John was. We got to know him later on when he did radio. It was different person, as he revealed to us. But, in terms of press conference guys, there haven't been great ones. Jay Gruden was loosey-goosey, sometimes funny. But as far as I can remember, there hasn't been anybody like Ed Cooley, the coach now at Georgetown, who took over just a mess. God bless God bless Patrick Ewing, but they were terrible the last 2 years. And last year they didn't win a Big East game. I mean, it was just awful. Cooley's only won one so far. He beat DePaul at home over the weekend. No great shakes. And last night they played Seton Hall, which could be a tournament team. They're pretty good, 11-5. They're 4-1 now in the conference. And they were getting blown out there for a while. Georgetown was down 14, but they managed to go up 3 late, and they just couldn't close the door because of turnovers. They had 4 turnovers in the last 3 minutes of the game, and that was really the difference as they lost 74-70. They got 30 points from Jaden Epps. He's their best player and really fun to watch, but couldn't finish the game. And this was Cooley in the news conference afterwards, doing what he does so well, talking to the media about his team.
Disappointed in our execution under 4 minutes. That's what we coaches are paid for. That's what we're paid for. We're paid for, right? So this loss is 100% on me, 1,000% on me. 3-point lead with the ball, 3 straight turnovers. I don't know if that's players or so much that's me, the coach. I got to do a better job instilling a lot more confidence in our guys and work on our end game execution, as that's something that we've always prided ourselves on. But again, it's the Big East. You know, it's really hard to come on the road and get a win. Give Seton Hall a lot of credit as they're playing really, really well. I for sure think they're a tournament team, right? You know, coming into these environments and getting the win. And again, we played desperate today. I thought, and if that's the way we got to play to be competitive, but we need our leadership to continue to grow and develop. We need our players to make plays at the right time. We got to value the basketball. 3 straight turnovers, you can't expect to win against a high-quality opponent like that.
He went on to say, I thought we were landing the plane. We were in our final approach, and the final approach got really bumpy. We landed it. We just landed it where everybody was saying, damn, I don't want to get on that flight again. Eventually, hopefully, we'll land the plane with some W's. Not getting any easier this weekend as they have to play a noon Sunday game at Connecticut. It's too bad, really, about college basketball, the way the season goes. It's really a 3-week season. It's really the tournament. So there's some really good basketball being played now in January. You watch, like last night's game was on Fox Sports 1. It was a 6:30 start, which may be a little early for some people. Good for me because I got to see the end of the game. But now they're going to go up against NFL playoff games this weekend. The NFL has just gobbled everything up. And why shouldn't they? Because whatever they put on the air gets great ratings. But the playoff games Sunday start at 1 o'clock. And so, if you want to watch the second half of that, you got to be back and forth. And there are people who will tell you, oh, get extra TVs. Don't be such a cheapskate. Well, I only have 2 eyes, so it's difficult for me to watch multiple TVs. Let's get to this. This is and look, this is his job to do these kind of things. This is what he's paid to do. He has his own business, Pro Football Talk, Mike Florio. So he looks at every story from every different angle, including ones that nobody is really looking at. And so he took what Josh Harris said at his news conference the other day, where he discussed the partners that he gets together with, like Mitch Rales and Mark Ein, and his business partner, name escapes me, from his main money-making business, the money that he's made to buy all these teams. And this led Mike Florio with his partner, Shireen Williams, to speculate that, hey, if somebody takes a job as a head coach or even a team executive in Washington, who are they answering to? Is it only Josh Harris, or is it a bunch of owners? Which led him into this discussion with Shireen about, well, is this really a great job for somebody to step into?
I'm curious to know. And the misadventures of the Panthers this year, I think, provides a very clear example as to how this happens. Josh Harris is in charge. Is he setting up this network, this table of people who will be advising him to truly objectively advise him? Or is this all just a way to make it look like what he wants to do anyway is the right thing to do? Because without Bob Myers and Rick Spielman and this person and that person to show that it's the right decision based on their own unique experiences, it just looks like a meddling owner who's coming in saying, this is what I want to do. And, he rattled off 3 names of his partners. Like, for a lot of these teams, when you have limited partners, they are extremely limited. Art Rooney won't listen to a damn thing any of his limited partners say if they try to tell him what he should do. He runs that show. And with Josh Harris, like, Irvin Magic Johnson is a very vocal presence, even though he owns a very small percent of the team. So you talked earlier, Shireen, about how attractive a place is. I don't know it's real attractive to me as a coach if I got to go to a place where I'm answering to this person, that person, then I got this person over here, then I got this person over here. That makes it harder, not easier for me to do. It's more people I got to worry about. Who's on my side? Who's behind me? Who's working against me? We all need to be on the same page. We all need to be rowing the same boat. And the fewer people there are above the coach, the easier it is for the coach to do what he's trying to do. So I think that all this, whether Josh Harris realizes it or not, and he probably doesn't, to me, makes it less attractive, not more attractive.
Well, and that's certainly a question to ask in the interview process, Mike, is who am I answering to and how many layers are there here? Am I going to be hearing from all these people throughout my tenure here? So, yeah, all those are questions to be asked. But you're right. You don't want to have that many people involved if you're a head coach. Josh Harris, I was interested because he owns 2 other teams, Mike. He owns the Philadelphia 76ers. He owns the New Jersey Devils. He's done this a lot, which tells me he's not really that good at it. He's hired 4 GMs and 3 coaches with the 76ers and 3 full-time coaches with the Devils. So he's done it over and over and over again. Maybe he finally gets it right with the Commanders. Maybe that's why he's asking for help, because he hasn't gotten right with his other teams, but he hasn't built consistent winners with those other teams. So I don't know how this is going to work out. He's certainly thinking outside the box of what NFL teams do. The Browns tried this with the chief strategy officer and all that, and hasn't worked out that great for them. But if it does, I think other teams probably look at this model. If it doesn't, they say, yeah, a new guy coming in. And other owners like when an owner doesn't consistently put a good team on the field. They like Dan Snyder in there because they knew they'd always beat Washington. So if this doesn't work out for Josh Harris, the other owners will be perfectly fine with this.
Well, a little piling on there by Shireen Williams and Mike Florio. First of all, my understanding is that Bob Myers and Rick Spielman are only involved in the hiring process. They're keeping their other jobs. Myers is not leaving ESPN. So I think the way I read it is once they've hired a head of football operations and maybe even a coach, maybe they stay around for that, they're out. I don't think that their jobs will continue past that. I think their only jobs right now are to be consultants in the hiring of a team president and or a head of football operations and a head coach. Now, Ben Standing of The Athletic just put this out. The Commanders' interview process continues today. Meetings with Bears assistant GM Ian Cunningham and Eagles assistant GM Alec Halabi. They are meeting. I guess Harris is doing all these meetings at his home in Miami. Far cry from the day that Dan Snyder had to ask Jim Zorn to go buy a suit and interview at his house. This is going on in Miami at his mansion. Also, Adam Peters, Mike Borgonzi. Oh, I got to get used to that. Mike Borgonzi he's with Kansas City, and Glenn Cook met with Harris and others yesterday. So they're moving right along. They're bringing them in one by one. What do you got to say? What do you got to sell? How would you handle the cap space we have? What do we do with the quarterback situation? Is Sam Howell salvageable? All those things. So it's pretty cool what's going on, and seems to be things happening. That's good. It's not like what happened when Joe Gibbs left, and it was 16 years ago. 16 years ago Monday, 16 years ago yesterday, whatever it was, 16 years ago. Left. Dan Snyder stayed up till 2:30 in the morning trying to talk him into staying. He resigned, and then they were waiting for the Giants to be finished with the Super Bowl so that they could hire Steve Spagnuolo. And Spagnuolo looked at the hiring process with Danny and Vinny and said, I don't want any part of this clown show. He stayed with the Giants, and they wound up with Jim Zorn, and they got their own clown show with that. Anyway, I'm going to steer away a little bit from this. We'll get back to this. A lot to talk about with what's going on, and it's very exciting time with all these names popping up and a new era for a football team that's been slogged in the mud for a quarter of a century. All right, coming up, Rick Spielman a couple of weeks ago did an interview with John Keim on his podcast, and I pulled out some bites out of that because I think it's instructive as to the way that they may be thinking. Spielman is not going to be the general manager of the team, but he's going to be influential in the hiring of a team director of football operations, or whatever the title is, and his thoughts on this organization as he shared them with John Keim. We'll get to those as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630. Well, there's no time to be bored because things are popping regarding the Commanders. A lot happening. Reports are that they interviewed Adam Peters last night, the assistant general manager of the San Francisco 49ers. By they, I mean the owner, Josh Harris, at his multi-million-dollar complex in Miami. He also reportedly met with two others yesterday. Josh Harris ain't wasting time. Mike Borgonzi, who's an assistant GM with the Kansas City Chiefs, and Glenn Cook, also meeting with Harris yesterday. According to Ben Standing of The Athletic, the interview process continues today. Meetings with Bears assistant GM Ian Cunningham, Eagles assistant GM Alex Halabi, and they are all slated to talk to Josh Harris today. It's must be like opening up a storefront at a mall. And you need to hire a team of employees, but first you have to hire a general manager who helps you hire those employees. So one by one, I can just imagine, are they sitting in the foyer with their resumes in their lap, waiting to talk to Josh Harris and his advisor? I guess everybody's all together down there. All the people that are involved in this, including Rick Spielman. Rick Spielman, the former general manager with the Minnesota Vikings, who looked at the sloppiness of this organization under Dan Snyder and saw how poorly they handled the Kirk Cousins situation, allowing Kirk Cousins to walk, and they were the ones who swooped down and got Kirk Cousins. Now, it hasn't worked out like many thought, because some thought, well, the Minnesota Vikings, they got to the NFC Championship game, so all they need is a quarterback, and they'll be set. Well, they've won one playoff game with Kirk Cousins, though Kirk's been very good, and the team has been good, just not good enough to get over that hump. But Spielman is highly respected, widely regarded as one of the better personnel people in the league, and he's now, I guess, doing television for CBS Sports Network and now consulting with Dan Snyder, with Bob Myers, who's the former general manager of the Golden State Warriors. They're all involved in this process. So a couple of weeks ago, long before his name was ever associated with the team, John Keim, who does a podcast and also covers the team for ESPN, had Rick Spielman on as a guest, just as, someone who has football experience, to assess what this organization is headed towards as the season was wrapping up. I believe this was after the Jets game, so they still had a couple of games left to go, 3 games to go, I believe. So they're the 49ers, the Cowboys, and the Rams, still on the schedule. So it wasn't quite the end of the season, but this was as it was coming to an end, and everybody pretty much knew that Ron Rivera was going to get fired. And I pulled some of what Rick Spielman said, because I think it's instructive to hear what he says about the organization as he will now be advising them what to do. So this was part 1, where Keim asked him what they have in terms of the quarterback with Sam Howell, and I'm paraphrasing here, but is this maybe a salvageable situation?
You watched him maybe the first 3 quarters of the season. You've seen a quarterback that has athletic ability, tough as nails. It's amazing for as many times as he's been sacked that he bounces right back up. He makes all the throws that you want to see an NFL quarterback make. So there was a lot of promising things that you saw early in the season. Then you see in the last month, where you see the pick sixes, you see the poor decision making. I believe he got benched or he got replaced by Jacoby Brissett this last game. So I don't know why all of a sudden the struggles have come along, if it's because he's just basically a one-year starter. But now there's some question in my mind on if he's the guy or not the guy. And is it all his fault? Is it not having like a true number one receiver? Or is it because of the pass protection? So there are a lot of things that they're going to have to look at in the offseason to determine whether he's the guy or not.
And that's what I wanted to ask you about too, is how you go about that evaluation, because as you know, the situation here, chances are a new staff will be in here evaluating and making that decision. So if you're coming on board as a new staff, new GM, new coach, how would you go about assessing that to make sure, because like you said, he's shown a lot that says that maybe he can be the guy. Then you have to compare to the draft. So how would you go about making that decision?
Yeah, well, whoever the new coaching staff, if there is a new coaching staff or a new head coach that comes in, the first place that I would start is, if I am hired as that new head coach, is to interview everybody on that current staff, because maybe you're going to keep one or two of those guys or maybe keep none. But I would really talk to the staff about how they feel about Sam Howell. And his practice habits, his study habits, and everything coming out of North Carolina were all A+ in that area. But I would also make sure that I am prepared when I go in, if I do get an opportunity to interview with the new owner, that I am fully prepared on the tape work that I've done on Sam Howell and the background that I have from the outside coming in, to give an indication on whether I think he's a quarterback of the future or not. And then once you put your staff together, you're going to have time to, with your offensive staff, your quarterback coach, your offensive coordinator, to do a lot of film study. If there is a new front office, the front office coming in, comparing to what potentially is going to be out there in the draft. Especially where they end up, and who knows where they're going to end up picking, if they're going to be in the top 5 or not, and then make a determination on what direction you want to go.
And again, this is a few weeks ago. Rick Spielman, former GM of the Vikings, now part of the advisory council for Josh Harris as he looks to hire a head of football operations. But this was before everything unfolded with the firing and the losing out the last 8 games of the season, and now the number 2 pick. But I just want you to get a flavor of what Spielman is saying as to how the process will go with Sam Howell. And I think even before the last 3 games of the season, which is when this conversation took place, there was still some hope maybe that Howell could show some flashes at the end of the year, where there might be doubt, especially if you won a couple of the 3 games. I don't think you would, but if they had, then do you reassess what you do in the draft, and you're picking further down the board, so maybe one of the top 2 quarterbacks isn't available as they are for you now. Either Drake May or Caleb Williams is going to be there at number 2. You can be certain of that. It's just the question of, do you want either one of them if they're available, or is there someone else you like? You could move down, all kinds of different things. But that's the first I'm hearing about Rick Spielman, from Rick Spielman, I should say, talking about the Commanders. But again, it was before the end of the season and before he joined this advisory council. This is more insight on how you look at Howell. What is the timetable for determining whether or not he can be your guy?
Usually it's a 3-year snapshot. That's kind of always been the unwritten rule. But now, does Eric Bieniemy stay there as the offensive coordinator? Is he the potential head coach if there is a head coaching change? Is it a whole new system that he has to learn? I mean, he's been there, 2 years, and has had 2 different offensive coordinators. So you have to take all that into account as well. But to me, the more they are familiar with the system, the more they are comfortable getting through the reads and progressions, understanding concepts, understanding how to attack defenses. But if the Commanders do make a change, then you're starting from scratch, and he's going to start from scratch all over again. So those are the things that you try to have to assess while you're doing this. The other thing too is it's going to depend on a lot of the things that aren't going on the field, like his study habits, how quickly he processes things. And you're going to rely on, hopefully he had out all that information when you went through the draft process, whether you're psychological testing, all the scores, the intelligence scores, everything that you've accumulated on him before he came out in the draft. But I think he has a lot of talent. So you don't know when some of these click, and that's the other thing is, do you have patience to make sure that if he struggles for another year, that you don't just pull the plug on him quickly?
Well, I wonder if the plug has already been pulled. But, I think he'll still have an opportunity here. Here's the way I would do it. I would draft Drake May or Caleb Williams or someone else you think is worthy of being taken in the top part of the draft. And even if you trade down, you still get for quarterback. But you got Sam Howell under contract for 2 more years. He's cheap. Keep him around, and if he wins the job, and have it a fair competition. Let a rookie coming in, you don't automatically hand him the job. Let him try and earn it. And if he beats out Howell and he looks really good in training camp and the preseason, you start him. If not, you start Howell and you bring the guy along slowly. If you look at the way that Bill Walsh handled Joe Montana was not a starter in his first year. And really in his second year, he didn't start all the games. He had Steve DeBerg there. DeBerg was a guy who he was a veteran and knew the system. And what Bill Walsh would do was he would put Montana in situations where he thought he could succeed, certain types of defenses, bad teams, things like that. And eventually, by the third year, he was the starter, and they traded DeBerg away. So I think it could work out. Even, we're almost 50 years later, so things are a lot different now in the NFL. But I still think you can do it that way, and that's why I would keep Sam Howell around for a while. This is Spielman on his personal evaluation of Sam Howell, what he has seen from him as he's watched him on tape.
I think you've seen enough of the flashes, but I don't know about the consistency. And is the consistency due to lack of experience? Some of the poor decision-making? Like I said, you're going to ask, why the heck did you throw the ball here when you got 16 guys covered on you? So those are the things that you're going to have to really assess. But if I'm sitting there and I have a shot, and we believe as a staff that you got a shot at a Caleb Williams or a Drake May, and those are the guys that you believe are going to get you to the Super Bowl, then I don't know if you can pass on that, regardless of how you feel about about him. So those are the things that, like I said, you're going to have to discuss a lot of things and evaluate a lot of things before you come up with a final resolution.
Yeah, I think you can't pass on one of those two. I think the answer to that is you cannot. This is more from Spielman, not specific to the quarterback, but it's about the job coming in as the coach of the team and the president of football operations. Again, this is before he hooked up with Josh Harris and joined this advisory board. So it's a few weeks ago. But Keim asked him, if you were looking for a place to land in the NFL, what would you look for in terms of a fit for your situation, either as an executive or a coach?
I think the number one thing is the ownership group you're going to work for and the patience they're going to have. And do they understand where the organization is, where the team is right now, and how long is it going to take to get that team up to the standards of potentially being a playoff team every year and potentially competing for a Super Bowl? So I think it starts with the ownership and their philosophy. And are you on the same page with the ownership's philosophy? If they expect you to come in and let's say you assess, and I know they have some draft capital, but we're going to be a young team, or we're going to try to go out there and be big spenders on free agency, which I personally don't believe you do right off the bat. I believe you build it through the draft, and hopefully you're doing well hitting your draft picks, and then supplement that with some trades and some players in free agency. But everybody has to be on the same page and understanding this is what we're going to do, approved by the ownership. This is the approach we're going to take. And the ownership is fully on board and 100% behind you. And this is how we're going to try to get try to get our football team to be a competitive year in and year out, and a potential playoff team every year and potential Super Bowl. But I think it starts with that ownership. It starts with the head coach. It starts with the GM, and everybody on the same page on how they're going to build this thing going forward.
And you can't have an owner getting off his yacht and instructing you which quarterback to take when you don't want to take Dwayne Haskins. But those days hopefully are over with. It's such a refreshing era to look forward to after what we've seen. This is the last thing from Spielman, and this is the one that might be a little bit of a head scratcher, because he is now fully on board he's part of the group, being paid to help make the decision on top hires. And this is where you might step back from this a little bit and say, well, here's a former general manager who's now going to work for this ownership group and maybe questioning what was done at the trade deadline and what was the motivation behind it. Again, here's Spielman talking to John Keim a few weeks ago.
I'm just looking from the outside, and you trade Montez Sweat and you trade Chase Young. Okay, well, you got some draft capital, but was that coming from the ownership? Was that a decision by the head coach? Was it a decision by the front office? Why was that? I don't know if the coaches want to get rid of two pretty good pass rushers when they're trying to fight towards the end of the year. So I don't know who's making those decisions or the philosophical process in making those type of decisions. But when you make those decisions, regardless, the owner, the head coach, and the GM all have to be on the same page when a decision is made.
Yeah, and that's kind of a lingering one. It really is a little bit puzzling why that decision was made, and that's Spielman articulating that. Now, I don't know if at that point he had any contact, and this also maybe addresses the timetable of his hiring, because I don't think he would have said that to Keim if he would already have been in contact with Josh Harris. So do the timeline here. This is like before the 14th game, 15th game, before the 15th game of the year. And he's now saying, I'm not really sure what happened with the trading of these guys. Was ownership behind it? Now, one way or another, it didn't sit well with the team. This was, if you missed this yesterday, I played this. This was Sam Cosmi when they did the locker cleanouts on Monday. And what he said specifically about those two trades, Young and Sweat being dealt at the deadline, and kind of the message it sent through the locker room.
It's definitely kind of a kick in the gut, when you lose your two best DNs, just for the team morale. That wasn't easy for the team. But, overall, we dealt with some injuries and just things were clicking, all season you heard that, one game offense would have a good game, defense wouldn't. One game defense would have a good game, offense wouldn't. It just didn't play complementary football with both sides of the ball. Just having the right, like I said, having the right guys, and that's up to Mr. Harris and the owners to figure that out. Who are going to be the right guys that can ultimately create a winning team. And, I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to this team. I'm tired of just not playing good football, sloppy football. I mean, you saw all year, it was just really, really sloppy football, and I hated it. I just hate being a part of that. And so I want to be around a winning culture. I want to be around a winning team and people that just want to die to win, And so, I'm gonna bring my skills and my work and my attitude and all that stuff to the table when I get here each and every day at work, when it comes to the OTAs going forward. So I'm looking forward to that for sure.
That's Sam Cosmi the other day. And again, he said kick in the gut when they traded Young and Sweat. And now you have Spielman, who's now part of the group, saying, I'm really not sure, who was behind that. Was that the coach or the owner? We don't really know. So these are just some things to keep an eye on. Also keeping an eye on the coach search. And while they do want to have a head of football operations in place before they hire a coach, the race is probably on right now for Jim Harbaugh. Now, the likely landing spot for Harbaugh, you would think, would be Los Angeles with the Chargers. They've got a quarterback there, and he probably would have more say there than he would have here. So it's probably a better fit for him. He played for the Chargers, if that's worth anything. He coached in that area at San Diego State, or well, now they're in Los Angeles, but you get the picture. He's familiar with the organization, having been in it. So that might be a better fit. But I wouldn't be opposed to going after Jim Harbaugh. And Booger McFarland was on yesterday with Dan Patrick assessing the pros and cons of hiring him and what Jim Harbaugh might be thinking. We'll get to that and more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
Hey, we go till noon today. Tony's got the day off. A lot to get to. If you missed the Wayne Gretzky sound bites, we call them in the business, there's a lot of fun with that, and I'm going to play that in the next hour as well. We're continuing to keep an eye on what's going on with Josh Harris in these interviews. Apparently, he's bringing them in one by one into his big mansion in Miami. It's what was in the Times today. It was he described as a $32 million mansion. In fact, Michael Phillips had the exact cost here. $32.3 million, 9 bedrooms, and a basketball court. Now, basketball court sort of standard for a mansion, wouldn't you say? Especially if you're a sports-loving person like Josh Harris. But he's bringing them in one by one, and has reportedly, according to Ben Standing of the Athletic, he's talked to Adam Peters, who's the assistant general manager of the 49ers. He has talked to Mike Borgonzi, who is with the Kansas City Chiefs. Not exactly sure of his title, but he's involved in, obviously, player personnel. Alec Halabi, Eagles assistant general manager and a Harvard grad, according to Phillips, one of the most respected young minds in the business, leans heavily into the analytics side of things, which will appeal to Harris. Harris is also a Harvard graduate grad. He was Harvard School of Business after going to a little place called Wharton at Penn. Will McClay, his job is vice president of player personnel for the Cowboys. And here's why I might look at him very carefully, because he's working under the handicap of Jerry Jones. You're not going to have that here. You know, he's not going to have owner interference with the Commanders. So this might be attractive to him. Then there's Ian Cunningham, who's the Bears' assistant general manager. His name has been out there for a while. And then Glenn Cook of the Cleveland Browns, assistant GM there, a two-sport athlete, played football at Miami, was drafted by the Chicago Cubs for whatever that's worth. But that might be intriguing, because they're in the playoffs with a quarterback who was on the street, Joe Flacco, you know? So I like their chances against Houston on Saturday. I really do. So I think this is very intriguing, and just keep an eye on it, because I bet you in the next week or so we're going to find out for sure who it is. Now, as for the coach, we don't know, and I would be very intrigued by Jim Harbaugh. This is what he said after the national championship on Monday night. The question about what's next.
Would you want to add winning a Super Bowl to that?
I just want to enjoy this. And I hope you give me that, Can a guy have that? Does it always have to be, what's next? What's the future? Like I said the other day, I hope to have a future. Hope there's a tomorrow, a day after tomorrow, a next week, a next month, a next year. And just one last thing. I got two great loves. My love at work, the people I work with, coaches, the staff, players, and the love I have for my family at home. And just means a lot. See a couple of the kids here right there, Jimmy, Grace, Sarah, Johnny, Jack, Katie, Addie. They're just the loves of my life. And my brother John being here, my dad and mom being here, and then to be here with our team, and that's those two families together celebrating. It's glorious. It is just a beautiful thing.
So what Harbaugh did was he basically went Phil Ford with the four corners. The question is, are you interested in winning a Super Bowl? He could have said, I'm not talking about the NFL right now. He did say, let me enjoy this. But then he took you on this long, convoluted ride about all these people he wanted to thank and how you might not live to see tomorrow. I mean, he's odd that way. He's not like his brother, but he's a winner. He comes in and he wins wherever he goes. He went to San Diego State. They won. He went to Stanford. Stanford had been terrible for a long time. Even with John Elway, they didn't go to a bowl game. So when he got there, that was a program just thirsty for wins. He built a program that was outstanding. He got Andrew Luck to go there, and they had teams that were in competition for the national championship. Then he goes to the San Francisco 49ers right after the lockout, the 2011 lockout, got them, and they were a bad team the year before with a short training camp, got them to the NFC Championship game and in the Super Bowl the next year. Sure, he flames out at the end. Sure, that happens with him. But he wins. He went to Michigan. Yes, he got his butt kicked by Urban Meyer for a while, losing first a close game, then he got blown out a couple of times. But now he's dominating Ohio State, which gives him great job security there, and he just won the national championship. So I would like to see him here. I would not be opposed to seeing that name come up as the new coach of the team. Yesterday, Booger McFarland, who's a frequent guest with Tony and on PTI all the time, was on with Dan Patrick, and Dan asked him, if you were Jim Harbaugh, what would you do?
I think I have to explore those opportunities a little deeper and ask the questions. Like the reason Jim Harbaugh, I think, is fascinated with the NFL is because he has unfinished business there. But let's go backwards to the last time he was in the National Football League. He was with the 49ers. Trent Baalke was the GM. I don't think the relationship was great with Baalke, and so they kind of butted heads a lot. And so now you fast forward and bring us to the present day. If he does get back in the NFL, then I think it's got to be the right situation, meaning he's got to have total control. Now, what does that mean? It doesn't mean he's the head coach and GM. It simply means he's the head coach, and the guy that is his GM is either somebody he picks or somebody that is on the same page as him, kind of like Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch. Like those guys work together. They were hired at the same time. Their contracts are concurrent. So you know that they are in this thing together and they see football the same way. Well, can Jim Harbaugh find a situation, whether it's the Chargers, the Raiders, the Falcons, the Panthers, can he find a situation that a billionaire owner, and you'll get this better than I do, a billionaire owner is ready to cede control of his entire organization to Jim Harbaugh and said GM. I don't know if there's a situation like that. Would the Spanos family do it? I don't know. They seem to really want to be hands-on. Would Tepper do it? I don't know. He seems to be really hands-on. So, like, if you think about the openings, is there anybody that's going to give him total control? Because I believe that's what he wants. And if he doesn't get total control, I think he's going back to Michigan.
Does Harbaugh's rah-rah style still work in the NFL?
Harbaugh is a leader of men. That works in any company, whether it's the NFL, whether it's television, whether it's Bank of America. When you understand how to lead and galvanize people, Dan, it works. It doesn't matter the style in which you do it in. What matters is, can you relate and can you connect with your employees? That is the essential thing that matters. And yeah, it was different back then. Like that NFL is different than the NFL now. But guess what? Did you watch the Michigan football team last night? Those are basically young NFL players. Like it's a lot of seniors and juniors on that team. And so you're talking about really not but 3 or 4 years removed from the median age in the National Football League now. So I would be guessed to say that the average age of every team right now is probably 26, 27. Well, the team he was coaching last night, the average age was probably 21. Like those, it's a senior-laden team. So he got those guys to run through a wall. Not only did he do that, he got a lot of those guys to come back and play another year rather than going to the National Football League. And so to answer your question directly, I think his style still works because he is a great leader of men, and that works in any company.
And the one thing that Booger said that really stands out is Harbaugh wants a lot of control, which we kind of know. And that doesn't sound like it's the situation they're going to create here. His brother has thrived in the situation they're looking to create here. Strong front office. Ozzie Newsome ran it for a long time. Eric DaCosta runs it now. And Harbaugh has worked just fine in that circumstance. He's worked very well, the John Harbaugh. Jim's different. Jim's different personality, different type of person, different type of background, where he was a star quarterback at Michigan and played 15 years in the NFL. His brother never made the NFL. So it's different when you look at the two of them. But, again, I'd like to see Jim Harbaugh come here. These things are fun when they're happening to another team. And they didn't exactly happen this way here, although there were stories of things going on with the coaching staff. But, boy, what has gone on with Wink Martindale and the Giants is a doozy. As of last night, the Giants haven't heard anything from Wink Martindale, their defensive coordinator. Stormed out of the building on Monday, and yesterday morning was on a flight headed home to Florida, lives in Florida. He's under contract for next season. He's owed $3 million by the Giants. They haven't fired him. If he quits, he forfeits the money. But even worse for him is the Giants can keep him from taking another job. You know, he'd be in demand. He's good defensive coordinator for sure, and the players seem to like him. But this is a power thing, it looks like. And according to what the New York Post has, his storming out of the building on Monday was a wildly emotional response to the head coach, Brian Daboll, firing his most loyal, confident outside linebackers coach, Drew Wilkins, along with his younger brother, Kevin, the Wilkins brothers, a defensive assistant. It has ramifications that need to get cleaned up contractually before Martindale and the Giants part ways. This is not exactly like, but somewhat like Marty Schottenheimer when he left the Cleveland Browns as the head coach, because Art Modell, the owner, wanted to fire Marty's brother, Kurt, as the defensive coordinator. Marty didn't want to have that, so he went off to the Kansas City Chiefs. And later, Kurt wound up here when the 1 year that he was the head coach of the Redskins. Daboll said during his early morning meeting with the media on Monday, after closing the 6-11 season with a 27-10 victory over the Eagles, that his expectation was that Martindale and offensive coordinator Mike Kafka would come back in 2024. This was before, though, Daboll met with Wink Martindale, so that expectation was sketchy, given that Daboll got the news that he was not happy with. And according to the Post, here's what went down, according to people who were in the building at the time. Daboll met with Martindale on Monday, told him that there were staff changes coming. Daboll mentioned the dismissal of special teams coach Thomas McGahee and offensive line coach Bobby Johnson. There was no secret to how close Daboll is with Johnson, and this was a tough one for Daboll, but he felt it was necessary for the betterment of the team. Daboll told Martindale that he wanted him to stay, but he was going to fire the Wilkins brothers. Martindale brought the Wilkinses with him from the Ravens. They were together. Now remember, he had problems with John Harbaugh, so that's the reason he left. You don't make a lateral move in most cases unless there's problems with the head coach. So he had problems with John Harbaugh in Baltimore. Now he's having problems with Brian Daboll and the staff changes that he wants. He was, of course, angered by the news that the brothers were fired. He cursed out Daboll, according to the Post, said his piece, got up, slammed the door, and walked out of the building. He notified those close to him that he planned to resign, but 24 hours later, they hadn't heard from him. There was a feeling in the building that Martindale and Drew Wilkins were creating their own fiefdom with the coaching staff, at times bypassing Daboll and believing he had to answer only to one another. This is such juicy stuff for the tabloids, and for a Giants team that finished the season surprisingly. They won games with Tommy DeVito. They won a game at the end of the year with a backup quarterback over a fading Eagles team. Didn't seem like a season should end like this, but we'll see what happens with Wink Martindale. I'd imagine they come to some type of agreement. I can't imagine you can mend the fences, even though Daboll says they expect him back. They haven't heard from him in 48 hours, and he cursed out the head coach and left. I don't see how that works. I wouldn't be surprised if it reaches the point where the Giants just go, okay, you're not here. We're not going to pay you, and you're not going to take another job. And if you want to take another job, we may ask you to buy out what's left on your contract, $3 million. Interesting. These contracts things reminds me of the story where Joe Gibbs retired the first time in Washington in March of 1993. The Carolina Panthers are formed as an expansion team a short time later. Well, Gibbs is now down in that area. He's in Charlotte running his race team. And, of course, they're interested in hiring him. So a year after he leaves Washington, retires the first time, they approach him and they want him to be the head coach. And Jack Kent Cooke says, no, you can't talk to him because he's still under contract to us. And Gibbs says, well, yeah, but I left. You're not paying me. Why can't I talk to him? And Cooke says, I got all your checks stacked up on my desk. If you want them, you have to come back for them. And so they didn't talk to him for a year. It was a period of time where he was still under contract in Washington and wasn't allowed to talk to Carolina. Eventually, he got around to talking to them, and they wanted to draft Kerry Collins, number 1 out of Penn State, and make him their starting quarterback. And Gibbs didn't like to start rookies, and he said, "No, that's not the right direction I want to go," and stayed out for another 10 years, right? Another 10 years before he came back and coached the Redskins again. So, trouble in New Jersey with the New York Giants and the head coach and Wink Martindale, the defensive coordinator.